On today's episode, I'll get into the top 5 of my current Chicago Blackhawks prospects list. Come and see who I have as the number 1 prospect in the entire organization.
You're Locked On Blackhawks, your daily podcast on the Chicago Blackhawks, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's going on, Blackhawks fans? Welcome back to yet another episode of Locked On Blackhawks, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I'm your host, Jack Bushman. Go and check me out on X at JackBushman2, but make sure to follow my strictly Blackhawks account at Talkin' Hockey, so that way you don't miss out on any of the latest Blackhawks news and updates. And I also got to give one quick shout out to today's sponsor, which is Game Time. Go and download the Game Time app, create an account, and then use our promo code LOCKDOWNNHL in all caps for $20 off on your first purchase. All right, happy Thursday, Blackhawks fans. On today's episode, it's the 4th and final part of my Chicago Blackhawks Summer 2025 Top Prospects list. First, though, make sure to go and check out parts 1, 2, and 3 if you haven't done so already. I don't really know why anyone would want to go into the top 5 without knowing who came before. And also, make sure to stick around for segment 3 on today's episode, where I'll compare my full list to some of the others that I've broken down in recent episodes. But for part 4 here today, it's time to get into my top 5 prospects in the entire Chicago Blackhawks organization. Before I do, though, a quick recap of the list up to this point in time. My honorable mentions: Landon Slaggert, Martin Misiak, Nathan Bem, Samuel Savoie, and Adam Guyan. Nolan Allen kicked things off in my top 20 at number 20. AJ Spellacy was next at number 19. Aiden Thompson came after him at 18. John Mustard next at 17. Colton Dock at 16. Ethan Del Mastro at 15. Ryan Green at 14. Mason West at 13 with Vaslav Nestrasil right in front of him at number 12. Then I had Jack Pridham at number 11, Marek Vanacker at number 10, Drew Comesso at number 9, Nick Lardis at number 8, Roman Kanserov at number 7, and closing things out in part 3 on yesterday's episode at number 6, I had Oliver Moore. Again, make sure to go and check out parts 1 through 3 for my full breakdown on each of those prospects and my reasoning behind where they came in this summer's rankings. Opening things up for part 4 here today. Getting into my top 5 Blackhawks fans. At number 5, I have the 18th overall pick in the 2024 NHL draft in Sasha Boisvert, 6'2", 183-pound center who just turned 19 years old back in March. And he, of course, had an outstanding freshman season with North Dakota, recording 32 points, 18 goals, and 14 assists in 37 games. One of the best freshmen in all of the country, won NCHC Rookie of the Year, and is now going to be transferring to Boston University for his sophomore season after North Dakota's head coach was fired, the same head coach that had been recruiting Boisvert since he was 14 years old, so elected to go and hit the portal, joining on with the Terriers this fall, where he'll likely be in either a first or second line role. Also, played for the Muskegon Lumberjacks of the USHL in his draft year. If that team sounds familiar, that was the same club that 2025 first-round selection Vaslav Nestrasil played for in the fall, and a pretty sound season for Boisvert in the USHL, recording 45 points, 17 goals, and 28 assists in 57 USHL games. Boisvert's best skills, definitely high-level goal-scoring ability, has a booming shot. Also, some really good size to go along with it, as he's 6'2", right around 185 pounds. Yet another responsible two-way player, and also known for his really sound work ethic. Does that sound familiar, Blackhawks fans? Kind of seems like Kyle Davidson's had a type these last few years, right? But I really do believe Boisvert's best offensive attribute is that shot. I think he's going to be a really good goal scorer at the next level, a guy who can consistently score 20 plus with the ability to get up into the 30s. And then I also think he has the ability, kind of like Oliver Moore, someone that can impact the game all over the ice and really does take his responsibilities seriously and has some overall good off the puck skills. But I do think with that goal scoring ability, Boisvert has the possibility to be a top 6 forward for the Blackhawks, more likely though as a second liner. But I do think he's someone who could excel on the power play because of his shot and likely can play on the penalty kill as well. So a lot of winning traits for Sasha Boisvert, a guy who can kind of give you a little bit of everything. In terms of my rankings, super close and super tough as well, like I mentioned yesterday in determining the order between Nick Lardis, Roman Kanserov, and Oliver Moore. Sasha Boisvert, I think, is right in that group as well, although I do believe Boisvert's shot is the most elite offensive trait between he, Roman Kanserov, and Oliver Moore. And while Nick Lardis is definitely the better shooter goal scorer, I think both of them are kind of in the same category of pure goal-scoring offensive players, but I do think Boisvert is more established and less risky than someone like Nick Lardis, and definitely has a higher floor because he brings that defensive responsibility to the table as well. So that was my reasoning behind having Sasha Boisvert ahead of Nick Lardis, Roman Kanserov, and Oliver Moore, and coming in here at number 5. Next up at number 4, Blackhawks fans, I have the man who I talked about during part 1 is returning to my prospects list this season after I probably wrongfully removed him following his rookie season along with Connor Bedard. I'm talking about Kevin Korchinski, the 7th overall selection back in the 2022 NHL draft, now listed at 6'1", 185 pounds as a left-handed defenseman, and still a very young lad, something I really try to emphasize whenever talking about KK, because I know there's a lot of discourse about him, especially given just how deep the Blackhawks blue line is. Not an ideal start to his professional career, but the kid just turned 21 years old a little over a month ago. And he had a sound season down in the AHL with the Rockford Ice Hogs. 27 points, 3 goals and 24 assists in 56 AHL games, was named an AHL All-Star and actually won the All-Star Game MVP. And then we also saw him appear in 16 NHL games with the Blackhawks, tallying 1 goal and 1 assist for 2 points. Second pro season this past year for Kevin Korchinski. Had the rules been different, though, he likely would have spent time down with Rockford during that first year up in professional hockey. And yes, while people are starting to get concerned about Korchinski, which I completely understand, right? Like I said, it hasn't been an ideal start to his professional career, but I do think we got to remain patient with this kid. And he definitely looked more comfortable and more confident in himself when up in the NHL last year compared to his rookie season. He's going to be competing for one of those final roster spots for the Blackhawks in the fall, but I think given his age and still not a ton of experience under his belt, unless he absolutely wows the coaching staff during camp in the preseason, he'll likely be opening up the season once again with the Rockford Ice Hogs, and that's not the worst thing in the world by any means. Continue to allow him to play in meaningful situations as a top pairing defenseman, getting all the opportunities in the world. We've seen that work really well with guys like Alex Vlasic and Ethan Del Mastro, Wyatt Kaiser even as well these last couple of years. So hopefully the same thing happens with Kevin Korchinski. As far as his best skills, it's definitely all about the skating. That's what gives him still a super high upside despite some bumps in the road these last couple of seasons. Such an effortless skater that glides around at a top speed of most other guys and can recover in a hurry whenever he does like to get involved on the offensive side of things. He is able to recover fast and go and gain ground rather quickly. It's all about, being more stable in the defensive zone, continuing to gain weight, and figuring out exactly how to manage himself in his own end and getting the puck out of harm's way properly. And I do think Korchinski did a better job of that, like I said last year, compared to his rookie season. And I do think with his puck moving capabilities, the way that he likes to move his feet, get involved on the offensive side of things, even though Sam Rinzel is now clearly part of the picture, Korchinski still will have an opportunity to quarterback one of the Blackhawks power plays moving forward. Maybe he doesn't have that same upside or ceiling that we once thought when we selected him 7th overall. But I do feel like because of his speed, because of his puck movement, offensive IQ, potential to play on the power play, I do still think Kevin Korchinski has lots of runway here, Blackhawks fans. And if he winds up putting it all together, I don't think he can be the top pairing defenseman we were thinking of a couple of years ago, but I do think there is still a role for him on the second pairing in offensive situations. Again, if he's able to kind of put it all together these next couple of years. So even though it has been a little sketchy for Korchinski these last couple of years, I still think his ceiling remains remarkably high. And I think he still has the ability to play a style of defenseman that thrives in the NHL right here, right now, where just speed is so evident. Offensive-minded defenseman, getting involved in the play, jumping up in the rush, producing more offensively. I think all of that is natural to Kevin Korchinski. He's just got to find a way to kind of raise his baseline in terms of some of his deficiencies and become a little bit more competent in the defensive zone. But again, we're talking about a kid that just turned 21 years old this summer, so still lots of runway for Kevin Korchinski. Still believe he does have a high ceiling at this point in time, and it was tough for me to dictate whether he should be, ahead of Sasha Boisvert, Roman Kanserov, Nick Lardis. I just think, given that he's right around the same age of all of these guys and already has good pro experience both in the NHL and NHL, and I do believe some of the concerns have been a little bit overblown. That's my reasoning behind still having Kevin Korchinski come into the top five. And in all honesty, last year, which probably should have been his first professional season, right, went pretty swimmingly down in Rockford and again made strides up in the NHL compared to his rookie campaign. So don't quit on Kevin Korchinski, Blackhawks fans. I'm certainly not. Still got him coming in my top five here at number 4. There are my reasonings behind Sasha Boisvert coming in at number 5 and Kevin Korchinski at number 4. Coming up in just a moment, Blackhawks fans, make sure to stick with me as you don't want to miss out who I have coming in the top 3 prospects in the entire Blackhawks organization. But first, I do got to talk to you all real quick about Game Time. We've all been there, logging on early and waiting seemingly forever for concert tickets to go on sale, only to lose your spot for a show that you've been dying to see. Live music should be about making memories, not dealing with the stress of ticket shopping. And that's where Game Time comes in. Game Time makes getting concert tickets faster and easier than ever because prices actually drop as it gets closer to showtime, and you can also save up to 60% with their killer last-minute deals. And if you're worried about what happens when plans change, well, the Game Time Guarantee always has your back with event cancellation protection and much more. So make sure to go and download the Game Time app today, create an account, and use our promo code LOCKEDONNHL in all caps. You'll get $20 off on your first purchase. Again, that's the code LOCKEDONNHL in all caps when you go and download the Game Time app to get $20 off with your first purchase. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed, Game Time. Real quick, before I get into segment 2, just a reminder to please go and hit that like button and subscribe to the channel if you like what I'm posting here on a daily basis on Locked On Blackhawks. And also be on the lookout for my reaction to the Blackhawks recent fan survey from The Athletic, where we get a little bit of an insight on how fans are feeling about the front office, general manager Kyle Davidson, the ownership, the rebuild, and all that good stuff. I'll be talking about that on tomorrow's show. But segment 2 on today's episode, of course, picking up where I left off, it's time to get into my top 3 prospects in the Blackhawks organization as of right here, right now, late July in the summer of 2025. Kicking off my top 3 at number 3. And by the way, I don't really think it should be a surprise who the top 3 prospects are in the Blackhawks organization, right? As I broke down some previous lists, and I think just looking from afar, it's pretty clear who these top 3 guys are. Now that Connor Bedard obviously isn't a prospect, neither is Frankie Nazar. It's pretty clear cut, but what's interesting is how different people have these top 3 ranked. Coming in at number 3 for me is Artyom Levshunov, the 2nd overall pick in the 2024 NHL draft out of Michigan State. 6'2", already 210 pounds as a 19-year-old, set to turn 20, though, this fall in October. And he had 19 points, 2 goals, and 17 assists in 52 AHL games with the Rockford Ice Hogs last year, spent, the first 75 to 80% of the season developing down in Rockford. Also got an opportunity to play in the Calder Cup playoffs. Not really his best showing, though, as he tallied just 1 goal and no assists in 7 postseason games. However, definitely looked the part when he got his first NHL call-up and played in 18 games with the Blackhawks, tallying 6 assists. And altogether, I thought just looked very poised, cool, calm, collected, as Artyom Levshunov always seems to be, right? He feels like the type of guy who's just truly never had a bad day. He always has a smile on his face. He always seems to be enjoying himself. And I think that kind of reciprocates out there on the ice. Now, there are some things he has to clean up, as I'll get to there in just a moment, but I think his natural freestyle, right, just allows him to be almost just look effortless out there on the ice. And he's super fun to watch, super intriguing, and look sharp in those opening 18 NHL games. As I mentioned, came out of the NCAA when he was drafted by the Blackhawks, played for Michigan State, an absolutely dominant freshman season to help the Spartans win the Big Ten, registering 35 points, 9 goals, and 26 assists in 38 games. And that was coming like straight. It was a real busy summer for Artyom Levshunov, between coming across to North America for the first time, getting a little bit of action in the USHL, then transitioning quickly over to the NCAA. There was no real off time for him, but he handled it swimmingly, and again, absolutely dominated one of the best conferences in college hockey in the Big Ten to lead Michigan State to some quality victories. But it's, going to be interesting to see what happens with Artyom Levshunov in training camp. As I broke down in my recent defensive pairing projections episode, I really do expect Artyom Levshunov to make the NHL roster out of training camp. He's already, again, looked very comfortable in that setting. And I think one thing that really helps him in comparison to someone like Wyatt Kaiser, someone like Kevin Korchinski, right? Guys who kind of needed to put on some muscle and add to their frame before becoming full-time NHLers. Well, Artyom Levshunov, as I referenced, is already a gosh darn grown man. 6'2", 210 pounds, and he's real thick and knows how to use his size. I wouldn't say he's like an overtly physical defenseman, but he'll knock you on your rear end, and he can take care of you in those dirty areas. But altogether, I do think his like free-flowing nature naturally draws him to the offensive side of things. I think instinctually he's more of an offensive defenseman than a defensive defenseman, but altogether he's a guy who, again, can give you a little bit of everything. He can play a mean and physical game. He also can play a little bit of a skill game, can move the puck really well, and even though we didn't see him score his first NHL goal, definitely had some good opportunities to get that done. What I would say is he just needs to clean up on his decision-making and the timing of some of his pinches and when to join up in the rush. I think he just has to get a better understanding of how the professional game is played, and that's not all that surprising or uncommon for a kid who's 19 years old, getting kind of thrown into the fire like he was last year. But undoubtedly, Artyom Levshunov has a super high floor here. The question is, and kind of always has been around him, something I brought up going through his draft profile before the Blackhawks selected him last year. It's just, how high is the ceiling actually going to be for Artyom Levshunov? That's the million-dollar question. We obviously still don't know at this point in time because he's still so young into his professional career. But these next couple of years are definitely going to give us some better insight on that. How I kind of project Artyom Levshunov to pan out down the road in a couple of seasons, I really do think he's going to be an effective, do-it-all, jack-of-all-trades, second pairing type of guy. Honestly, I don't like doing comparisons to the old Dynasty Blackhawks era and getting fans to like think this guy could be the old this guy or something along those lines. But I really do think Artyom Levshunov, probably not as much of a vocal leader as this guy, but I really do think he's going to be the Brent Seabrook of this era of the Blackhawks. A guy who, like I said, can give you a little bit of everything. He can be reliable in the defensive zone. He's got a big frame as a right-handed shot and can score some goals, can contribute on the offensive side of things and on the power play. I just think Artyom Levshunov's floor is going to allow him to be a good NHLer for a long, long time. But again, the question is just how good is Levshunov going to be? There's some questions about just how high his upside really could be. I kind of project him as a consistent 40 to 50 point defenseman in the NHL who is impacting the game in a lot of ways. Power play, penalty kill, O-zone, D-zone. He's going to be someone who does it all for a long, long time on that blue line. Next up, at number 2, Blackhawks fans, I have Anton Frondell, the 3rd overall pick in the 2025 NHL draft, listed at 6'1", 205-pound center. Got some real good size to him for a young man. He just turned 18 back in May, so on the younger side for the 2025 draft prospects. But of course, Frondell played in the Hockey Allsvenskan League this past season, the second-tiered professional league over in Sweden, and had a really sound season in that league. 25 points, 11 goals, 14 assists in 29 games worth of action. Ended the season on a much higher note than he started. Was dealing with a little bit of an injury to open up the year, and I do think that impacted probably his lack of production at the U18 World Juniors, where he had just 3 points in 5 games when, a lot of the 2025 draft prospects were playing in the U20 World Juniors. Not exactly an ideal production from Frondell in the U18s. He also didn't get off to the best start in the J20 league over in Sweden with 7 points, 5 goals, 2 assists in 10 games there. But once he got healthy, once he was able to put it together and get a consistent flow together, he was one of the more consistent producers and one of the more reliable players for Djurgårdens in the Allsvenskan League last year, and of course helped them win the Hockey Allsvenskan League championship. Frondell, though, is going to be returning to Djurgårdens once again over in Sweden. However, they're going to be up in the SHL this year as they got promoted for winning the Hockey Allsvenskan championship, and that'll likely be Frondell's last season over in Sweden before coming over to North America and joining the Blackhawks organization. But Frondell, as far as his skills go, he's a big two-way center with a booming shot, maybe the best in the entire 2025 draft class. And he also provides some savvy defensive play and just a knowledge of how to already play and have success at the professional level. And kind of similar to Artyom Levshunov, I think because of his mold, because of his experience, I really do think Anton Frondell has a remarkably high floor. Like, he is going to be a solid NHLer, but like Levshunov, the question is, how good of an NHLer is he going to be? That's kind of the kicker here with Anton Frondell. Super high floor, but a questionable ceiling in terms of exactly what type of impact player he is going to be. But I do think because of that shot and because of his size and the way that he impacts the game defensively, he's going to be a staple in the top 6 for the Blackhawks. It's just whether he's going to be first-line center, first-line winger, or second-line center, second-line winger. That's what we're going to find out these next couple of years. But because of his goal-scoring upside, I think Frondell, I talked about the shot with Sasha Boisvert. I think he's going to be a consistent 20-goal scorer with 30-goal upside. Well, Anton Frondell, I think, is going to be a consistent 25 to 30-goal scorer in this league with 40-goal upside if he is really able to figure it out and put together some better pace and add some more layers to his offensive game that'll kind of make him more well-rounded and diverse out there on the ice. If he's able to do that, then there is a super high ceiling for someone like Anton Frondell. And again, at bare minimum, he's going to be a guy who can play in all situations, in all 3 zones, and be a coach's best friend out there, someone that can be very reliable in all types of situations. So it's a high floor here for Anton Frondell, but also he's got the capabilities and the traits to put together a very high ceiling. It's just about how he goes about his business these next couple of years until he becomes a full-time NHLer with the Blackhawks. But between he and Levshunov kind of determining how I wanted to go about things in my top 3 here, I just think Frondell's shot is definitely the best attribute between those two, and that gives him a little bit of a higher ceiling. While they obviously do play different positions, it's kind of hard to gauge, but I believe Frondell has the higher upside of the two, and they're both high floor type of guys. So that was my reasoning behind Anton Frondell leapfrogging Artyom Levshunov and ranking number 2 in my Blackhawks prospect list. Coming in at number 1 here, Blackhawks fans, in the summer of 2025, my top prospect in the entire Blackhawks organization is Sam Rinzel, baby. The 25th overall pick back in 2022. And what a deal. What a decision that looks to be by general manager Kyle Davidson, because boy, oh boy, am I stoked about Sam Rinzel. He's now listed at 6'4", 190 pounds. And oh yeah, this kid also just turned 21 years old 1 month ago in late June, just a couple of days younger than Kevin Korchinski, which is kind of crazy to think about considering how different their paths have been these last few years. But For Rinzel, an excellent sophomore season with Minnesota, 32 points, 10 goals, 22 assists in 40 NCAA games, one of the best defensemen in the entire country, and had a really strong freshman season as well. 28 points, 2 goals, 26 assists in 39 games, and also chipped in with 1 assist in 7 games at the 2024 World Junior Championship, where he was teammates with Frank Nazar and Oliver Moore, Dominic James possibly as well. Can't remember that roster the best off the top of my head, but I know Nazar and I know Oliver Moore were there. They obviously won the gold at the WJC that season. And then we saw Rinzel join on with the Blackhawks late last season after closing out his sophomore season of college hockey and looked real sharp. 5 assists in his first 9 NHL games. And I think just more so than that, the way that he went about his business, the skating upside, the amount of opportunities that this kid generated and the amount of looks that he had to get his first NHL goal, I think had us all absolutely ecstatic about the future and the continuously long runway that Sam Rinzel possesses. He's a big, smooth skating, puck moving, offensive minded defenseman with, again, just so much runway because of his skating ability and his size. 6'4" and skates like a deer. Those type of guys don't grow on trees, especially on the right-hand side, Blackhawks fans. And I also think he did a pretty good job of utilizing his long reach in the defensive zone to break up some plays. And his good size will allow him, I think, to handle the professional action against grown men in the NHL. Like Artyom Levshunov, I fully expect Sam Rinzel to be a part of the Blackhawks NHL roster right out of training camp. I know he could probably use some seasoning in Rockford, but I really do think he's ready for the NHL level. What he showed us last year, what Kyle Davidson likes out of his prospects when they hit the NHL level, they're ready to thrive, not just survive. And Sam Rinzel already looked like he was ready to thrive with the Blackhawks last year. So I don't see really any reason not to have him up in the NHL next year. But I truly believe, Blackhawks fans, Sam Rinzel is going to be a special defenseman in this league. There's a reason I have him at number 1 here, and I had Frank Nazar in my last Blackhawks prospect list at number 1. I was tooting his horn for a long, long time and had me pretty pumped up and had me tooting my own horn a little bit, seeing what he did for the Blackhawks in his first real NHL stint last year. Frank Nazar is going to be a stud. I feel the same way about Sam Rinzel. I think the sky truly is the limit for this guy, again, because of his size, skating ability, and just overall offensive makeup, goal scoring, playmaking. He can be a guy he's probably going to quarterback the top power play unit for a long time. He's quickly leapfrogged Kevin Korchinski in that situation. And because of his size, I do think when he's able to put it all together, and he's still like a little bit of a raw project as he's only 21 years old and a fresh 21-year-old, like, once he's able to learn the defensive side of things a little bit more and add some more weight and strength and become more of a man, I really do think that's going to allow him to not just survive in the defensive zone, but thrive in those situations as well. And it'll be along with someone like Alex Vlasic, who's obviously learned to be very savvy in the defensive zone in terms of getting the puck out of harm's way. He'll be learning alongside him for years to come. I literally could not rave more about Sam Rinzel. I really believe he's going to be a consistent 60-plus point producer in this league because of the way he skates, because of the way that he can affect the game in so many different situations. He is the ideal blue liner for the modern-day NHL, and I could not be any more excited to see what he's got in store for us moving forward here. Undoubtedly, to me, Blackhawks fans, Sam Rinzel is the top prospect in the organization now that Frank Nazar is out of the prospect stage of his career. And quite honestly, even if Frank Nazar was, I think the sky's the limit for Frank Nazar too, but I don't know if he has quite as high of a ceiling as someone like Sam Rinzel. I don't think anyone else in the Blackhawks organization quite has his upside, aside from maybe someone like Mason West. But that's going to wrap up my Chicago Blackhawks Summer 2025 top prospects list. Let me know down below in the comment section, Blackhawks fans, how you think I did on my top 20. Who do you think I have too high? Who do you think I have too low? Let me know what you think about my top 5. Give me your full 2 cents down below in the comment section. It's one of my favorite segments that I do here on the show a couple of times throughout the course of the year. Sam Rinzel, the number 1 prospect in the entire organization. But coming up in just a moment, Blackhawks fans, stick with me for segment 3 as I still want to go through a couple of the other prospect lists that I've recently brought up here on the show and compare them to my own. All right, just want to say real quick, thank you all for making Locked On Blackhawks your very first listen here to start off your day. For your second listen, make sure to go and check out the Locked On NHL podcast, where there is no offseason, bringing you the daily league-wide stories that matter most with the local coverage you love from Locked On. And you can now find Locked On NHL on YouTube or wherever you may be listening to your podcasts. Segment 3, before I close out today's show, I, of course, went through a couple of other Blackhawks prospect lists that have been dropped here this summer from Ben Pope of the Chicago Sun-Times, Stephen Ellis of Elite Prospects, and Scott Wheeler of The Athletic as well. And now that my list has concluded, I wanted to compare them to one another. So real quick, to run through my official top 20 list, Blackhawks fans. Number 1, Sam Rinzel. Number 2, Anton Frondell. Number 3, Artyom Levshunov. 4, Kevin Korchinski. 5, Sasha Boisvert. 6, Oliver Moore. 7, Roman Kanserov. 8, Nick Lardis. 9, Drew Comesso. 10, Marek Vanacker. 11, Jack Pridham. 12, Vaslav Nestrasil. 13, Mason West. 14, Ryan Green. 15, Ethan Del Mastro. 16, Colton Dock. 17, John Mustard. 18, Aiden Thompson. 19, AJ Spellacy. And at number 20, closing things out, is Nolan Allen. And I mentioned Ben Pope of the Chicago Sun-Times also released a top 20 prospect list. Let's get into his top 20 and see how it compares to mine. He also had Sam Rinzel at number 1. He did have Artyom Levshunov ahead of Anton Frondell, though, had Levshunov at number 2. I could understand the reasoning behind that. Levshunov is, a year ahead of Frondell in terms of being established. I would just argue that Frondell has the higher ceiling of the two, but I am a little bit nitpicky there. Like I said, it kind of depends on who you're asking in terms of the Blackhawks top 3. Both me and Ben Pope had Korchinski at number 4. He had Oliver Moore at number 5, and then Nick Lardis at number 6, Roman Kanserov at number 7, and Sasha Boisvert at number 8. He had Boisvert below each of those 3 guys, while I had Boisvert ahead of those 3 guys. And I certainly understand Nick Lardis being at number 6 for Ben Pope. Like I said, he definitely has the capability to be inside the top 5 by the midway point of this season, but I do think he is a little bit more risky than the other guys in this conversation. Ben Pope had Del Mastro at number 9. I had him at number 15, and it's not because I don't like Ethan Del Mastro, just because of the sheer depth of the organization. Ben had Drew Comesso at 10. I had Drew Comesso at 9. He had Colton Dock at 11. I have Colton down at 16. He has Vaslav Nestrasil at 14 and Mason West at 15. I understand that, Colton Dock, who we had at 11, Ryan Green, who we had at 12, is a little bit more established than those 2 guys, but I don't think there's any question which prospects have the higher ceiling. He then had Marek Vanacker at 13. I had him at 10. He has Samuel Savoie at 16. I had him in my honorable mentions. Nolan Allen, he had at 17, and I had him at number 20. AJ Spellacy, he had 18. I had him at 19. He had Jack Pridham at number 19, and well, I think AJ Spellacy is going to be a good pro. Nolan Allen, has a high floor. I think putting Jack Pridham behind those 2 guys is absolutely ludicrous. And then John Mustard at number 20 for Ben Pope. I had him at number 17. I think Pridham absolutely needs to be ahead of Samuel Savoie, Nolan Allen, and AJ Spellacy. But that's just my opinion. As far as Stephen Ellis's top 10 Blackhawks prospects, he had Rinzel at number 1 as well. And like Ben Pope, Levshunov at 2, Frondell at 3. I just had those 2 flip-flopped. He had Oliver Moore at 4, Boisvert at 5, Marek Vanacker at 6, and then Nick Lardis at 7. I just don't know how you can have Marek Vanacker over Nick Lardis, to me personally, but again, I do understand that Vanacker is just starting to scratch the surface and has a very high ceiling of his own right. He had Ethan Del Mastro at 9, Colton Dock at 10. I just personally think that's a little too high for those 2 guys. But again, to each their own. And then Scott Wheeler, in terms of his top 7 that he had listed in his top 100 drafted NHL prospects list, he had Artyom Levshunov at number 1, which I like Artyom Levshunov. I don't think he has the higher ceiling between Anton Frondell or Sam Rinzel. Frondell was next up for Scott Wheeler at number 2 then. Sam Rinzel at number 3. That's too low for him, in my opinion. He had Kevin Korchinski at 4, Oliver Moore at 5, Nick Lardis at 6, and then Sasha Boisvert at 7. So kind of the same guys for the most part in the same range. Like I mentioned, though, just a little bit of a different order for yours truly, and that's the natural way to go about it, I would think, is, it's going to be a different order for every single different person. But I have Sam Rinzel at number 1, followed by Anton Frondell at 2, Artyom Levshunov at 3, Kevin Korchinski at 4, and then Sasha Boisvert rounding out my top 5. That's going to close out today's episode of Locked On Blackhawks, everyone. Again, thank you all for joining me on the show. Be sure to follow Locked On Blackhawks for free if you haven't done so already, wherever you may be listening to your podcast, and go and subscribe to Locked On Blackhawks on YouTube. That way, you don't miss out on any of the latest episodes as soon as they get uploaded. Until the next episode, everyone, enjoy the rest of your Thursdays. I'll see you next time on the Locked On Blackhawks podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.